So we just want to say, we wanted to do this in person, but because of safety issues, we wanted to be inclusive and make sure that everyone was here. So we want to thank you guys for accommodating. Okay. So do you want to? Oh, so we will be starting first with Senate. We each of you will have 2 minutes to speak, and we ask that you please all be respectful of each other and the responses. We will start off with the order will be Leslie will be speaking first, then Elizabeth, and then Jonathan. And ask questions.
Okay, so the first question is, what do you hope to accomplish for residents in the first 100 days?
After thanking all the voters who supported me, I would pledge total accessibility to all the citizens of Central Falls and promise to respond quickly with any concerns they may have. I would reach out to the Central Falls mayor and state representative and city council, one, to inform them that so they can inform me of the most pressing issues that I need to address immediately to the Senate, to bring to the floor to the Senate. And secondly, ask them if we can create a platform that is in the best interest of our residents. I believe that working together as a body will be the best success for Central Falls.
Thank you. Since Elizabeth isn't here, Jonathan, would you like to speak?
Sure, and first I just want to thank y'all for the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm humbled and honored to be with y'all, and I look forward to hopefully a few years from now, you guys being in our seat and us being in the audience. As far as what the first thing I'll do if I was elected, I think given the timing at which the swearing in happens and where the governor's budget goes in, I would say that after September 8th, on September 9th, it's really the elected person's job to start working with the governor's office and have a conversation about making sure that our priorities as a district and as a state are reflected in the next state budget. And so the governor is required to submit the budget in the middle of January, which means we won't be in our formal position really at that point, where she's already drafted everything. And so I want to make sure that we've had a conversation about what education spending is going to look like in the next fiscal year. I want to make sure we have a conversation on increasing taxes on households earning above $477,000 a year so that we have a revenue stream to support the services that we should be supporting our municipalities with. And the only way to do that is to start next week and not wait until January 1st or the second week of January once we're in the General Assembly. So that's the first thing I'll do if I was like.
I'm sorry, I'm just getting to join the conversation. I had some technical difficulties. Can you now hear me? I didn't know what the question is, and I don't know what Leslie's, Jonathan, I caught some of his answer, but I don't know what the question is. I'd certainly like a chance to talk about that.
The question is, what do you hope to accomplish for residents in the first 100 days?
Of next year? Or should I tell you what I've been accomplishing in the last 12 years?
When you get elected, if you were to get elected.
Well, the first 100 days, I think speaking to the governor is one thing, speaking to your leadership is another. You cannot put any bill through unless you have somebody that can sponsor that same bill in the House, no matter how hard you try. That would be number one. And as far as the budget goes, the Senate's duties with the budget, you can either approve the budget or you can say no to the budget. And the reason I say that, in the Senate, we do not control the budget. The House controls the budget all the time. So yes, I agree that we should talk to the governor. We should talk to our leadership. But if you can't get it through the Senate, you get it through the Senate, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pass in the House.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, what made you decide to run for Senate?
That's Leslie, right? Is it Leslie Floss?
You're muted, Mrs. Strong. We can't hear you.
I
Hear you.
I can answer that question. Is Leslie? Can you hear us? Oh, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. In the first 100 days, I will seek to acquire more COVID relief for our residents, including the undocumented residents, schools and small business owners, because we know that this triple effect is going to continue to be in effect from years to come. I want to introduce bills, two bills that are critical to the community. One, obtaining conditional driving license to the undocumented, like we did in New York, like it was done in New York, and two, address the funding formula for schools.
Thank you. Jonathan? No? Oh, she answered the first one.
Yeah. So the second question is, what made you decide to run for Senate?
You want me to go, or do you want to allow Mrs. Estrada the opportunity to answer that?
Mrs. Estrada, please.
Sure.
I decided to run because I'm a product of Central Falls. I became pregnant at 16, became a single mom. And I got into some trouble. Coming from a poverty-stricken city that directed where my zip code was, I was labeled, and people that defined who I was, and that doesn't define who we are from Central Falls. I know what the real struggles are. I've been here for 44 years. My children and nieces were born here, and I've chosen not to leave Central Falls, and I want to make a difference.
My turn to answer that. I'm running for re-election because there are many projects that have not been completed, that have been begun. The Broad Street project still needs to be finished. The train station needs to be finished. We continue, and I'll let you know that for the past 12 years, I have consistently voted for undocumented to get driver's licenses. We have put that bill in for the last 12 years, and it goes to the House, and it doesn't get passed. Law does not become effective unless it's passed in concurrence between the House and the Senate. So yeah, that's a job that still needs to be done. The new projects that are going to be done, the Broad Street train station is another development that's starting. That will be a shot in the arm, and it's the Providence and Worcester line. That's into fruition. The Coates Field area, that's going to become into fruition. So there are a lot of projects that have been begun. It started with the Conant Street Bridge back in when I first became senator, and it's been moving right along over the period of time. The minimum wage was $7.40 12 years ago. It's $11.50 now, as of October 1st. So that's why I'm running for re-election, because there is a lot more to do.
Thank you.
So I'm running for Senate because of what I would consider the three strikes that pushed me into it. The first strike was the school budget cuts. And so as soon as they started cutting the funding to our school district, I realized that at the state level, there was a silence. There was a refusal to be loud, to be upset, and to be frustrated publicly. There were a lot of backroom conversations, and that's fine. But there wasn't a lot of advocacy for the community. The second strike was the Wyatt Detention Center, holding undocumented folks under the new recriminalization, hyper-criminalization of immigration without any of our permission. And frankly, just even the opening of the Wyatt Detention Center, to me, is an insult as a resident and as a human being. And the third was the way that our current senator voted on the Women's Reproductive Health Care Act. I think that the woman's right to choose is fundamental. We decided that decades ago, and I find it ludicrous that we're still fighting for it today. And so as a nerd, I tend to sit on the sides and write about these types of issues. But what I found in the last few months, and really the last few years at the local level, was that there are groups of people collectively committed to the same legislative and social goals as myself. And so I'm proud to be part of a statewide groups and a local group of people fighting for ideas and policy goals, much more than about individual leaders and relationships. This is not about my ability to convince my friend to vote in a way that I think is right. This is about moving an agenda forward. And I've found people, like I said, at the state level and local level that are committed to doing that. And we're excited to do that, to bring a living wage much quicker than a 12-year time span, to bring equitable school funding, to have affordable housing in our city, to look at renewable energy, to undergo tax reform, and to drive down healthcare costs. And we're going to do that at the state and local level. And we don't need to be best friends with the people that we're working with in order to do that.
Thank you.
The next question is, why do you believe people should vote for you? Leslie?
Like I said, I grew up in the city. I've been here a long time, and I've committed to the city. I was a member of the Board of Trustees for the city of Central Falls, and I was appointed by the Commission of Education. I'm on the statewide action plan for the student program. I'm a volunteer for the elderly housing. I'm on the Women and Infants Advisory Board. I'm on the Paralegal ABA Advisory Board. I'm on the City of Central Falls. I'm sorry, I'm on the City of Appeals for the City of Central Falls. And I like to do a lot of community work. We were the ones, along with Mayor James Diosa and our state rep, Josh Geraldo, we started Earth Day here in Central Falls in a small little basement apartment. I'm committed to my city and I'm committed to my residents. I am a woman of my word, and I'm transparency. I will not promise what I can't keep, and that's why I want people to vote for me.
Thank you.
I want people to vote for me because first, I believe I've done a wonderful job for the city of Central Falls. I made sure that the retirees got most of their money back during the bankruptcy. I cannot be blamed for the bankruptcy. I had no authority with the budgets or any of that stuff. I certainly did say over and over and over again, you should be watching what's being put in your pension. You should be watching what's going into the budget and what's being taken out of. I can say that, but I had no authority to do anything about it. The detention center came in during the time of Mayor Lazia, because the city was in dire need to get something going. The choices we had was to have an incinerator on one end of the city and a detention center on the other side of the city. Okay, as far as the illegal immigrants, I don't like to call them illegal immigrants. I rather call them undocumented. I don't believe anybody that comes here because they want a better life, it should be called illegal. I've always worked with the Hispanic community. You can go right over to my church, and certainly my pastor will tell you how much I work with the community who are Hispanic. I come from a poor family, probably poorer than some of the others that came here. All right, I'm from an immigrant family. That's how we got here. So I certainly well understand. I've been in this city for 68 years. I've lived all my life in this city. I worked for the city for over 40 years. There's no one that has a stronger advocacy for this city than I do. And that's why I want to be reelected. Thank you.
I don't want anybody to vote for me. I have a healthy ego, but this isn't about individuals. This is about a policy agenda. I want people to vote for a living wage, equitable school funding, affordable housing, renewable energy, tax reform, and driving down healthcare costs. That's what I want people to vote for. And when an elected official does not come through on those policies, I want you to vote them out, whether it's the current incumbent, me, or the other opponent. It does not matter who the person is. It matters what the policy agenda is.
I don't agree with that.
We're
I
voting
agree with you more.
I respected your time. I need you to respect mine.
It's me.
What I'm saying is we need to vote for an agenda, all right? And when we do, as soon as whoever the person in the office is not coming through with that agenda, then we vote them out. It's that simple. We can't marry our hopes to a person, but to a set of policies that will benefit our community and our district. And so what I can tell you is that there are many people in the state of Rhode Island, in the General Assembly, on both sides, that understand that these policies are wanted by the electorate, right? Somebody has a bill right now, Conley, who would have thought, right? Put forward a bill to increase taxes on the wealthiest households, all right? So the stuff that I'm talking about is not just me, right? Like, I'm just a face, I'm just a name. It's a set of ideas that we're voting for, and that's what we want voters to vote for. And if I don't come through, just vote my butt out. I'm happy to move on and to try my best in some other arena. But until then, this is the most complete set of policy goals out there. And so that's what I think people should be voting for. Not Jonathon Acosta, but all the issues that we've raised.
Thank you.
The next question is, schools in Central Falls have been experiencing budget cuts. Students have had to say farewell to teachers who have been serving our community for many years. What would you do to ensure that Central Falls schools receive adequate funding? Leslie?
I believe I answered that in the first question, which would be, we definitely have to really address, fight the formula, the funding formula. It's been swept under the rug. People just look every other different way, and every year we have to fire our teachers, and our kids go through emotional difficulties. Our teachers go through emotional difficulty. They don't know if they have a job. They're going to come back to a job where they're doing a great job with very, low funding as it is. And, when I was on the board of trustees, I was one of the board members that had to fire these teachers. And I hated when it came down to June, May and June. I knew these teachers had to be fired, and that's one of my main reasons. Education is huge for me. My son has a lot of learning issues, and my parents both got second grade education, and they really, really pushed education on us. And getting this notice of getting fired, I can't imagine what it's like getting this notice, getting fired to get fired every year. So we definitely have to work together, because our students cannot go through this every year, and our teacher cannot go through this every year. The parents cannot go through this every year. We need to change the funding formula. Not, we're gonna try. No, it needs to be done as soon as possible. Like, there's just no waiting time. It has to be addressed.
I think the senator is muted. We can't hear her right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize if I got a little over vigorous on this last time. As far as school funding, you're absolutely right. But let me put, there was a mention that when you come down to looking at the funding of the schools, next to Central Falls, you see an asterisk. That asterisk is there for two reasons. One, because the budget is controlled by the state of Rhode Island, by the will of the people back when the schools were taken over. That's number one. Number two, it's also there to help protect Central Falls from having to pay for its own school system. Because I can guarantee you that if we had to pay the total bill coming from the state, because this is what I hear every year when I'm there. Every year when I'm there. Well, what more do you want us to do for Central Falls? Central Falls gets enough of our money. We wish that we could have as much money as you're getting without your taxpayers paying for Central Falls. Now, I know our taxpayers pay through the roof just to maintain municipal services and to maintain school buildings. Okay, so fine, let's go back over to the State House and let's fight them, and they'll say, fine, Central Falls, you think you know so much, then let you pay for the schools. We'll fund everybody right out of their homes. People will leave. We'll have a ghost town. Okay? Because you could not afford to pay for the schools. So what do? We talk to the commissioner. We talk to the superintendent. We talk to the governor. I have been involved in all of those conversations. I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I haven't spoken to the superintendent lately, but they did refund the schools. As far as teachers getting laid off, it's not only Central Falls. In this particular case this year, I think Central Falls teachers were the only ones, but it happens throughout the state. When it comes to the end of the budget year, they say, and you are gone because you don't have tenure, and we have to, by contract, by teacher contract, we have to lay you off. Okay, that's in the contract because we have to notify you by June something, as I recall. I don't have the figures in front of me, but that is why the Central Falls teachers were laid off. I think there were 42 of them. And I sent a letter to the commissioner, and I spoke to them, and I said, we cannot have this. The teachers who are being laid off are the ones that teach the arts, theater, music, sports, whatever they are. They think that those are non-essential. I beg to differ with them. They're as essential as arithmetic and English and history and civics and any other courses that kids take in school, all school, K up, all right? I support, and I strongly support, give me one, I just want to finish this thought. I strongly support K through 12, especially K and pre-K now, because the younger we get our children, the less problems we'll have in the education field. Thank you.
Thank you.
So before answering the question, I need to acknowledge the grace and humility of our panelists, but also of their classmates. During the most recent demonstration, I held up a sign that said, "You are lucky we're asking for equity and not revenge." The kids of Central Falls have spent their entire lives knowing that they were underserved. Every time you played a game in a sport against another team, anytime you traveled with the club to another school, you saw that they had more stuff than you. You saw that they had better resources than you. And so to me, I don't accept this, the state feels like we're giving Central Falls too much. Too bad. You assumed the responsibility in the early 1990s. So now it's time for you to take that responsibility. We should be the most efficiently funded school district in the state because it comes straight from the state. And so getting to Mr. Estrada's point about the funding formula, my mentor in my master's program wrote the formula. And so digging into it, one thing we have to acknowledge is this is not a CF problem. It's not a Pawtucket problem. This is a statewide problem. The base amount for education is $6,380, right? Like, that's crazy. In our neighboring state, it is so much higher. It's $7,243. In Connecticut, it's $8,386. So Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire outspend us just at the base. That means average white kid, not poor, suburban, speaks English.
In New York.
Those kids get less money than every other state around us. That's ridiculous. Now, getting more to the Central Falls Pawtucket point, there are parts of the school funding formula that are given as an automatic, right? You are a free and reduced price lunch student. You're a low income student. You get a little bit more. We know it's more expensive to educate you. You live in an urban area. You get a little bit more. We know it's more expensive to educate you. You're an English language learner. Ooh, you have to apply with the Rhode Island Department of Education, and we'll reimburse you if we decide that it's worth it. That is ridiculous. English language learner status is done through testing and identification. That should be an entitlement the same way that having special needs, an IEP, or being free and reduced lunch, price lunch eligibility is measured, right? That money should be dispersed. Now, the way that we make it a state issue is getting everybody in the General Assembly to recognize who are the kids that are the fastest growing population in the state of Rhode Island. Anybody? Latino kids. English language learners, those from former Portuguese colonies or Portuguese folks themselves, right? Those are the fastest growing child age populations across the state of Rhode Island. And so when we talk about funding, everybody's getting shot in the foot right now. Every single school district is getting underserved, especially for the ELL population. And so we revisit that funding formula. You're not just helping CF. You're helping every single school district in the state. We need to spend more as a base amount, and we need to make ELL a real entitlement, not something you have to apply for and then they say, well, we recognize some of your kids as English language learners. That's ridiculous. That's unfair. Straight up, it's racist. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is, what is one major issue you plan on addressing? Leslie?
Can you repeat? I can't hear you. I don't know which question you're on.
What is one major issue you plan on addressing?
I debated with that question. I have to say education. Education, because the more we educate our children, the better jobs they're going to have. The more we educate their parents who are non-English speaking, the better jobs they can have. And if we can educate our non-speaking and our children better, then we can bring better jobs to Central Falls, better opportunities to Central Falls.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, number one, education is certainly among the top priority. Is that my number one priority? Let's see, children getting fed every day is also my top priority. People having houses to live in that they can afford without 4 or 5 families living in them, that's a top priority. People living under the bridge on Division Street, the homeless, the veteran homeless, that's my top priority. The city of Central Falls and its people are my top priority. The city of Pawtucket are my top priority. There's no one thing that is a top priority, all right? I focused on reducing mortgage payments and to stop, to put a moratorium on people who were gonna be foreclosed during the recession that we had. And we're just coming out of that when we were hit with COVID, okay? I also voted for education for people who are not skilled, okay? They can go to CCRI. I certainly support education for not only children, but for people who are in working conditions that want to better themselves. I support education in another way. I'm on the Child Care Commission, and I don't consider childcare a babysitting service. Quality childcare has to include educating that little one, teaching them before they get into kindergarten so that they can tell the kindergarten teacher, this is what's wrong. You better focus on this to help this child now when they're still educable, when they're malleable, when they're able to learn more. So childcare is on the top of my list. Affordable quality childcare is a must. That's number one. I could go on and on and on. So number one, education. Number two, affordable housing. Number three, hunger. Feeding the poor and feeding the hungry. Number four, senior citizens and making sure that they get their medications, and so on and on and on and on and on. And that's what I've been focusing on for the past 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
So due to the amount of time left, we're gonna skip to questions.
Oh, I didn't get to answer though.
Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry.
Threw me out the window, man. Yeah, so I'll just say real quick. One, policy-wise, every single one of my policy proposals will have a drafted bill with co-sponsors by the second week of January. So the details we've been putting out on Facebook Live, but the question is really what's one major issue you plan on addressing? And for me, that's term limits and term lengths. As I said in my opening, you know, it's my dream that in 10 years, it'll be Janelie and Karen here. I don't want to do this forever. This is not my life. I have other things in my life, right? I view this as giving back and it's important, but we need other people in these roles. And so people currently spend their lifetimes in office. There is no reason why anybody should have been on a city council or in the General Assembly for longer than I've been alive. And that's true in Pawtucket. That's true in our General Assembly. That's crazy. They're hoarding how to and lording over resources and the communities that they govern in like if they're feudal lords. We cannot do that. We've already implemented term limits in the CF municipal government. I want to do the same thing in the General Assembly. I say we take it out to vote. This is part of our state constitution. In 2022, we let the people decide. Should we have term limits for our General Assembly? Right now, the party leadership has a vice grip from the top down in our state. We can't let that happen for much longer. It is their responsibility to nurture and train the next generation of leaders. They're not currently doing that unless you follow their line. I refuse to accept that. And what I say is anything that I've acquired, anything that I've learned is open source. That's how I do my academic work. That's how I want to do my political work. If you want to run for office, I will tell you everything that I've learned and I will talk to you about legislating, but it should not be something that we hoard. And right now, the unlimited term limits in our General Assembly make it so that people hoard that. I'm tired of that. This is not feudalism. We need to move on. And so we're going to get rid of unlimited term limits. Thank you.
Thank you.
So due to the amount of time left, we're gonna skip to questions that other people have asked. So the next question is, do you believe in redistributing funds from the police department to youth serving or social service programs? Furthermore, what is your stance on the Black Lives Matter movement? Leslie?
You're muted.
Can you speak a little louder because I can barely hear you?
Do you believe in redistributing funds from the police department to youth serving or social service programs? Furthermore, what is your stance on the Black Lives Matter movement?
Did you say defund the police department? Is that what you said? I believe in defunding?
Mhm.
No, I do not believe in defunding the police department. I believe in reforming the police department and putting in policies that protect the civilians more. I believe that policemen should be held accountable to a higher standard, that they should be punished severely for the things that they do, but I do not believe that they should be defunded, no. And what was your other question?
What is your stance on the Black Lives Matter movement?
I believe that they should be supported, Black Lives. We have to support them just like Latinos. It's racial discrimination, and we have to show this country that Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. Betty? You're muted.
Okay, got it? Okay. Well, certainly Black Lives Matter to everybody. So do brown lives, so do yellow lives, so do red lives. There should be no discrimination, no matter what color you are. The Irish were white, and look at them, they were slaves too, during the time that the African American was a slave. So even white people can be slaves. So all lives matter. What does not matter is looting and violence. I think we should all be able to protest. Let it be heard. But looting and violence and stealing from your own people is not the way to go. With the police departments, I agree with Leslie. We can't defund them. I think we need to educate them. I think we should have stronger rules about when they should use lethal force. And in fact, it should be almost never. But they also are people, and we have to be concerned about them getting killed by somebody. So it's a balance. All right. As a law-abiding citizen, when a police officer says to you, stop, stop. Now, if that police officer takes in his hand to shoot you, well, then he should go to prison. I don't believe in capital punishment, but he should go to prison for the rest of his life, and the key should be thrown away. That's how I feel about that. So defunding the police department is not the right answer, because we're a country of laws, and we all need to abide by the law. Thank you.
Black Lives Matter, 100%. 0 point and stop. I've been marching for years. You know, before we were in politics and needed to be in front of cameras and all that stuff, we were moving. And we're going to keep moving after all this stuff is over. And so, absolutely, Black Lives Matter. One thing I will say is that I reject importing Fox News into Central Falls and Pawtucket. We haven't had looting here. And I don't think we will, frankly, because of who and the type of community that we are. We also haven't really been having a defund the police conversation for a variety of reasons. I think one is that we have a better relationship with our police department than most communities with 20,000+ people in a square mile, the majority of which are people of color. But I think another reason is that people understand the reality of what our budget looks like. And so, you know, we can sit down and look at the police department's budget, and it's actually not that fungible. There's not that much stuff that you can move around or tweak. A lot of it is contractual. And so I've been in conversations with folks saying, hey, look, they have great collective bargaining agreements. They've got a really good union. And I'm a pro-union guy. My thinking on a lot of this is, why isn't every other union this strong? And I had this conversation in the last Central Falls budgeting fiscal year meetings, where I said, look, right now, based on the way their contract is written and the fire department contract's written and everybody else who's in the city government's contract is written, as soon as we have budget problems, everybody else gets fired first before you touch the police and fire department. Now, of course, police and fire department are essential. One might argue that public works are also essential. And so what I would say is my vision is strengthening all workers in America and obviously holding the police accountable. But the defund the police conversation is a federal level conversation. The overwhelming majority of hardware and utility machinery that our police department gets is from the federal government. It's not from the state or municipal government. And so we should definitely be holding our federal government accountable for selling military grade weapons to our police departments or giving them military grade weapons. They shouldn't be treating us like war criminals. But I think we're also in a different place in CF, and I refuse the Fox News importation of fake news into our city. We don't have that issue right now. I'm glad we don't have that issue, and I want to continue to not have that issue as we move forward.
Thank you. Now we'll be moving on to the mayoral candidates. The question is, what made you decide you wanted to run for mayor? Maria? You're muted.
Now I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah.
So what made me decide that I wanted to run for mayor? You know, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, if you would have asked me, and many people asked me 6 years ago, they asked me if I would run for mayor, and I said no, because I would have never thought of even running for city council, but here I am. And I owe this to the community. I feel that being on the council, I have been the ears and the eyes for a lot of our community and connecting them with resources, especially for the community that has been underserved here for many years. Mayor Diosa has done a great job in the city, but we need to continue that leadership in the city. And I know that I played a big role with him in many of the things that we've done in the city. I have a plan on my website that addresses the needs that the community has addressed with me. And some of those are fiscal responsibility, promote racial justice, equal opportunities for our constituents. I'll see the new Central Falls Pawtucket train station to ensure that the Cone and Thread District development is robust and equitable. You know, affordable housing is huge on me, and I need to make sure that we continue using our voices for the residents of the city. I'm extremely concerned about gentrification in our city. I'm going to work closely with the Central Falls Police Department to ensure that our residents are safe and protected. I will fight to build our young people and provide them the opportunities to learn how to be self-sufficient. So there's a lot of reasons why I want to run. But I think the biggest reason is because the community has asked me to run, and I'm going to listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you again, ladies. By the way, it's been a great forum. Nice to see both of you. So the reason that I decided to run was because other than the passion I have for our great city, residents did ask me to represent them as mayor. They'd seen the work that I've done over the last decade or so, and they saw that I cared about the city and the people of the city. It's not about a particular group or a clique, but more the entire city. So I have a heart to bring people together, making sure that everybody has a voice at the table. I work with the youth, I work with the elderly, I've worked with everybody in between. It really doesn't matter to me because the people in the city, to me, make the city. Otherwise, we're just streets and buildings. There's lots of issues that we're going to get that are going to be addressed as the train stop comes, right? We're going to look at things like gentrification, as candidate Rivera said. And I also think that it's very important that we pay attention to what's happening with our finances. And I think because we're not really involved as a community, that sometimes gets lost in translation. So that's a very important thing for me. And as I go out, I hear that. So thank you.
Joseph?
Sorry about that. I have somebody here technologically savvy, a lot savvier than me. The reason why I'm running for the mayor is because obviously I served as a police chief for my last 7 years. I spent 28 years on the police department. I served people at their worst times. I've been in people's houses during homicides, during stabbing, shootings, different things like that there. And I was able to, as rising up through the ranks and become the police chief, I was able to secure $1.5 million in grants and funding with grants and appropriations. We were able to buy 27 brand new police cars and various other equipment, but we never had 27 brand new police cars in the 28 years I was in the police department. So things like that, I think I can enhance what I did for the police department along with the major and the captains at the time and bring that over to the city of Central Falls, the entire city. But many things that are unique, as they had hit on before, is some of the finances. I mean, just recently, unfortunately, some of the finances weren't correctly monitored because the city of Central Falls overtaxed the taxpayers approximately $700,000. And with that tax, the taxes that people could use, we talk about people surviving on a daily basis. When we look at overtaxing our own taxpayers at approximately a 4.7% tax rate, they should have never passed the 4% tax rate that they were given to by the state of Rhode Island during the bankruptcy. We already suffered through that time, as Leslie Estrada had mentioned about the Board of Trustees. One of the issues with the state, they had a budget for the school district was $52 million. Plus right now the city budget is 19.6. You mean to tell me we can't run 1 square mile and $71.56 million? I find that difficult to believe. So what I would like to do is get an organizational meeting together with all the department heads as the first course of action, and then sit down and then go through all the funding and see where all the money is going, because there's a lot of money there that should be directed in other places. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, if you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why? Maria?
If we received $1 million, I believe that our children and our youth are the future, and that every opportunity to be turned into can be turned into a learning experience. We have $1 million bond right now that the voters voted for a community center. I would match that $1 million and make sure that we create a state-of-the-art community center for our kids and for the elderly in our city. I think it's extremely important that we bring back a community center to our city. The kids have been asking for this, and we really need to try to figure out, what do we do with our kids in the summer after school? And the community center is definitely something that's needed here and that they've been asking now for years. So I think with $2 million, we will get a great start with a community center in our city.
Thank you. Tia?
So not surprising, people are listening and know that the community center is the thing that's been void for a decade. That's quite a long time. Working with the youth in the community garden and at the schools, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? So what are they gonna do? There's a lot of programming in the summer. There's some programming throughout the school year, but not enough. Never enough, not for us. So I think the community center, starting the community center, $1 million can start us. I think that we have a robust Parks and Rec department that can help us to cover some of that, and not so much dollars, but labor. Parks and Rec is bigger than it's ever been. We have multiple people there, and I think it's important because, again, this is a place where we come together, right? Places that multi-generations come together, places where communication happens. We've not had that for over 10 years. And Karen, Janelle, I mean, these are things that you probably don't even know how much you missed. But if you talk to, people that are older than you, they will tell you what they're missing, what you're missing today. So I think that that is very important and a high priority.
Thank you. Joseph?
Is that unmuted? Yeah, okay. I have to agree with him. I believe the community center is a top priority as well. I would use $1 million to fund that. We had discussions over the last 4, 5, 6 years about funding a community center, going back in meetings, and unfortunately that just appeared to be talk. We got to do some action with it. Not only funding, one of the plans that I have besides that, and I guess I can encompass with the community center, would be to start baseball, football, basketball, soccer, arts, and music, give them each $15,000, 10 organizations for $150,000 a course, so we don't charge our parents any money for the kids to play sports. You see a lot more kids at home, unfortunately, that don't have the opportunity to play sports because they can't afford it. I know recently my grandson last year played football, my granddaughter cheerleaded. And what happened with that, it was $150 for each one of them, so that's $300. What I like to do is have the people, the families, and I take that $300 and go to the store and use that for groceries rather than paying for their children to play sports. So that's important. But one other thing is, if you get a community center, I love to see a pool, because many of our minority kids have a difficult time swimming. And there's a lot of drownings that take place because, unfortunately, a lot of youngsters, especially of the minority youngsters, have a hard time swimming. I'd love to run a program so we can teach them how to swim, so we don't have to go knocking on somebody's door to say that their child just drowned. Just as recent as yesterday, I believe, in Providence, they just had someone do that. So I think it's a great idea with the community center. I think collectively we all should be on that same page to put the youth and our elderly population in a place where they can get along with each other and break down the bridges that usually occur between the young population and the elder population. Because if we go into any one of our old folks' homes or the elderly complexes, that's the best education we can get throughout the city. They're retired doctors, teachers, homemakers. There's a lot of education through there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what steps will you take to ensure that low-income residents of Central Falls are not displaced following the development of the train station and revitalization of former mill complexes? Maria?
Next. So there was a cone and thread ordinance that was presented to us last year, like in March, and we held that ordinance for like 6 months because our city, the city of Central Falls, did not agree with everything that was on the ordinance, because it stated nothing about affordable housing, which is the biggest concern for myself and a lot of the council members now. So we held that ordinance until we came up with a housing trust fund that will give opportunities to the residents that live here, and for the investors that are gonna come in here and develop, we'll have to invest in it if they don't want to have low-income housing in that section of the city. And that passed. So after we passed the housing trust fund, then we passed the cone and thread ordinance.
Thank you. Tia?
So there's no doubt that the introduction of the train stop is already changing the makeup of our city. People from Boston are already buying, and you see property values going up. So we need to be very aware of what is happening. Now, what we can do, again, as those areas that are not developed get developed, I agree, we need to make sure that we have a percentage. of affordable housing so that people who live here still can live here, right? We shouldn't be getting priced out. The other thing we need to be made aware of, I think, is the reason that we have such low home ownership. Why are those reasons? I'll point back to the taxation problem. So as our taxes go up, so do rents, not for everybody, but for many. And I think that's something we need to look at. And we want to make it affordable for people to live here and own here. We're only 24% home ownership. That causes a lot of other problems in our community.
Thank you. Joseph?
All set. Thanks. One of the problems is with the train station, although it's going to be nice, the whole area is going to be nice. Pawtucket's doing a lot of building. Central Falls, in cooperation with Pawtucket, it should be a nice area. The problem is a lot of people from out of state, specifically Boston area, because they're going to be able to take trains to Boston, they're going to displace the Central Falls people. Unfortunately, because if we have home ownership, especially from absentee landlords, they're going to end up putting some of the people from Boston in locations in our city, and it's going to push out the city residents because the higher rents are going to be there, and we're going to end up having our city residents move into Providence and Woonsocket and different other places throughout the state of Rhode Island. So although the train station is going to be nice, I think we're going to have some problems with the displacement of Central Falls people.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to say, can you go with the second half of that question?
What was that again? The other half was, I think you answered it fully because it was,
Okay.
Yeah, you answered it fully.
Okay, no, it's okay, thank you.
The next question is, what will you do to support the undocumented community in Central Falls in the aftermath of the pandemic? Maria?
So I have to say that since the beginning of COVID, I've been working with the undocumented community in the city of Central Falls. I was one of the first ones that started helping them and raised funds to help them and made sure that they had food. I know that they didn't qualify for resources like SNAP benefits or unemployment. So it's continue advocating for those resources. Thankfully, the Latino elected officials here in the state of Rhode Island, we got together and we drafted a letter and sent it to the governor and the state leaders, and they were able to raise over $3 million that is now being distributed to these families. And it's because we got together, we drafted a letter and we sent it to them. So it's called We Are One. In the future, we need to have a plan in place. We need to have a plan in place. There was not a plan in place. I feel that we did act quickly to help a lot of these families, but we need to have a plan in place and not create a plan while this is happening.
Thank you. Tia?
So, of course, the undocumented population in our city is the most vulnerable, right? So over the last 3 or 4 months during the pandemic, I also organized a group of people. We collected materials and we made masks. We also delivered food so that people didn't actually have to come out. So people who were doubled up or tripled up, they were, of course, infecting each other, and this caused a bigger problem. So these are the things that we can do. I agree, we shouldn't be reacting. We should be proactive. That's why I pushed to get another testing site closer. Because one of the problems we have is in our community, a lot of people are going to have to take public transportation. How are they going to take public transportation to a testing site? Infect themselves, infect others? What are they going to do? I'm the first person to give somebody a ride. Obviously not during pandemic. So these are things that we need to continue to push for. I think that we need to also work with our state delegation to make sure that we are getting the funding that we need. We do have special needs. We have 4,000 or 5,000 people who don't even get counted in our community, who need funding because they just need basic needs, housing and food. And of course, those are the things, as Senator Crowley said, are near and dear to her heart, and they're near and dear to my heart as well.
Thank you. Joseph?
Thank you. I think, first of all, the COVID-19 response, for us waiting 5 weeks, unfortunately, Reynaldo Almonte, who's from Providence with the Latino Public Radio, he's the one that had to bother the governor to say that we need to have the COVID-19 response and her daily briefings in English and Spanish. That upset me because, as we all know, there's 70 to 80% Hispanic population in the city. And whether friends of ours, any one of us that are actually running for office, anybody in this city, especially when you're coming from Central Falls, we already up against it to begin with, and not to have that information provided to our Latino residents to begin with is disheartening. And I mean, most of our city public figures are of Latino background. And the difference is why would we wait? Why would we wait 5 weeks to have somebody jump on board and be the leader for the COVID-19 response? I mean, to me, like I said, it was pretty upsetting that we had to deal with that. But the governor, as of now, I mean, they're doing it in English and Spanish. Now, being the oldest of 8 kids, I know growing up on Hunt Street back many years ago, my parents were in one room, my 3 sisters were in one room, and me and my 4 brothers were in one room. And if somebody was infected, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, it doesn't matter, because when you're infected, you're going to infect the entire house. I know growing up, there was 19 kids in one 3-decker house that I grew up at 585 Hunt Street. So I feel the same thing as the Latinos are feeling right now, because they were slighted for 5 weeks waiting for the governor to actually represent the entire city of Central Falls, Pawtucket, Providence, or our Latino community. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our last question. If you don't win the election, how do you plan on continuing to serve Central Falls? Maria?
Am I on mute? Hold on. No.
No.
First, can I just want to say something real quick regarding the COVID. From the beginning, I was holding Spanish lives on Facebook for the Latino community of Central Falls, talking about everything that the governor was saying in English. And regarding if I don't win the election, you know what? I'm a leader here. This is about leadership. If I don't win this election, I'm going to continue being a voice for the community. I'm going to continue to be available. Prior to being an elected official, I was available to the community. I'm just more accessible now because I'm in the public eye. And I'm going to continue being that person. There's no reason for me to step back and not help our community if I don't win. And that would be selfish on my behalf.
Thank you. Tia?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
If you don't win the election, how do you plan on continuing to serve Central Falls?
So it's no different than what I've done for the last 10, 11 years. I continue to serve my community, right? Wherever it's needed. I've sat on school boards. I have sat on the library board. I've worked with people in the community garden. I've done many, many things. It wouldn't stop me. It has nothing to do with a position or a title, but more about my care for the community. I love the community, and I believe that there aren't enough mentors for our youth. So that's the piece that really speaks to my heart. But more than that, there's a large population of people who actually don't have a voice. And that's my heart, is for people, everyone, to have a voice.
Joseph?
Great question. And the same thing with me. I've lost the mayoral election to the mayor, James Diosa, going back 7 years ago. And I've still been in the city. I didn't move. I have no intentions of moving. I like to be part of the city, as I have been, like I said, when I spent 28 years on the police department. I know we have to all work together. And I think one thing that's missing, there's one state representative, James McLaughlin, who represents my old seat when I did for 7 years, is Central Falls and Cumberland. And I think our city leaders currently, and all our leaders altogether in the entire city, has to work hand in hand, and they have to bring him in and give him a pat on the back every so often for the work that he does. He's out here on a daily basis working his rear end off for the city of Central Falls, and he only has 30% of Central Falls in his district. So I think collectively, we have to be more inclusive rather than exclusive to a certain group of individuals. People are in the city are white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. We need to bring them all together to get a common goal, which is to get everybody to work well together, make the best efforts we can. We have people that are actresses, obviously from Central Falls, fashion designers, doctors, lawyers, police officers, firefighters. We got a lot of good, talented people in the city of Central Falls, and we need to pick their brains, specifically in the elderly complexes and things like that there, because a lot of them have the reputations around for being in Central Falls for a long, long time. I think collectively, again, we have to work all together, regardless of personalities or anything like that. We have to take each other and pick each other's brain to get some good ideas. I know I spoke to the mayor 4 years ago. And I told him, first thing I would do is I was elected mayor. I give him some statistics. We're number one in teenage pregnancy. We're number one in the least amount of income per household. 1 out of every 7 adult males is on probation. That being the case, these are numbers from before a few years ago. And what happens is when someone goes on probation, 1 out of 7 adult males, you lock them up, you take their whole family, you have to go on state assistance. The problem with that is we should put a letter together, put all them statistics down and tell everybody we've got a culturally diverse community with a lot of hardworking people. Send that letter out to the Fortune 500 companies and have them come over to places like Osram and right on the corner of Cottage and Hadwin Street, the old Philippe Braid, and have them come in here and invest. Why can't Nike put the soles of sneakers on in Central Falls? We have to look beyond just tunnel vision. We have to look peripheral vision. We have to look at the bigger picture to get people working. If people are working, nobody's in any trouble. That makes it easier, especially in my past job and my current job as a sheriff. I don't like to see people in court and when they're arrested and things like that there. I think we got a lot of talented people that have use for many other things that can help benefit the city of Central Falls, all our people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to thank all of you for showing up and taking time out of your day. We know how busy you all are, and we'd like to apologize for going over time. Thank you so much.
And can we say one thing?
Thank you, lady.
First of all, I want to thank you for hosting this, but I think today we need to say our deepest condolences to Tia to be here when she just lost her mother. So on behalf of the state of Rhode Island, and I'm sure that Maria and Jonathan and Joseph and Leslie all wish you, I'll give you our deepest and heartfelt condolences.
Sorry,
Thank
Tia.
you, everyone.
I apologize. I'm sorry for your loss, Tia.
Same thing, absolutely. Sorry for your loss.
Thank
Thank
you.
you as well.
Sorry.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.